Okay, so let's take a look at how to use list views within Xamarin.Forms. Now, first thing, just before getting into the code, I'm using the beta channel build of Xamarin Studio 6 on the Mac that was released at Evolve last week. And while I haven't done an in-depth comparison of how things might differ between this and the stable release of Xamarin Studio 5, whatever it is right now, um, I don't think there's going to be that many. I don't think there's going to be that many differences. The main difference is going to be this dark theme here, and also the code completion, especially in the XAML, is going to be much more complete in Xamarin Studio 6. But Xamarin Studio 6 has been very stable for me so far, so I'm going to keep using it. And now into the list view. So first of all, I've got this application here, and what I've got, the way that this is going to be set up is I've got some tabs. I've got 4 content pages, each shows off a different feature of list views, and then I just add them all into a tabbed page and then make the main page of the application be that tab page. Very simple. Then I've got a static class over here, or a class of static properties rather, that has some data in it, and this is just so you don't have to watch me type. And so I've got a string list here, which is just a basic list of some strings, an observable string list that will provide some feedback as to when the list is modified, and then a product list, which is an observable collection of product. And this has got some more structured data in it. And as you can see up here, the product class is merely 3 public properties. Okay, so the first thing we'll look at here is how to do a list view completely in code, so no XAML. So I've got a title for this class here that derives from content page, and the title, this will be what is actually in the tab, what's actually the title for the tab that represents this page in the application. And then I've got this padding here set up so that on iOS the content will not go underneath the status bar. So that's what this 20 pixels here does. Outside of that, incredibly simple, simply create a new instance of the list view and then set its item source. Now the item source I'm going to use is just the basic string list that's in that data class, and what this will do is the list view will automatically create a cell for each item in this list, and then simply set the content of this page to be the list view so it'll take up the entire page. So what does that look like? Well, here's how it looks on iOS. So on iOS I've got 10 different items here, one for each string in the list. It'll scroll like a UI table view would in iOS. In Android, no surprise here, it's simply the same thing, just looks like an Android application instead. Okay, so let's go on. Let's see how to do this now in XAML. So if you want to do this in XAML, it's also very simple. I got my title again for the tab and my padding up here, and then it's just a list view element and then a name attribute which will represent the variable that we'll use in code. And that variable is this time again data string list. It's the exact same string list that we used before. So you're probably thinking this isn't going to look very different than it did between the code and the XAML, and you're right, it doesn't. It looks exactly the same. In fact, just notice there's a little bit of a layout shift on iOS, and then on Android there may be a shift there too, but because of the animation you can't tell. But at any rate, that's 2 ways to do the same thing. Now, of course, you're probably rarely going to want to use just a list of strings. You're going to want to have some kind of more structured data. And as seen before, got this product class up here that has 3 properties in it. So how could we get it to show only one of those specific properties? Well, for that, we're going to use data binding. Now, for data binding, it gets a little more complex, but still nothing out of the ordinary. So the list view is going to have a template for each item. So that's what this list view item template element does. And then there's a data template in there. And then what the data template is simply going to consist of a text cell. Now a text cell is a special type of view cell that Xamarin.Forms creates already. It's designed for, not surprisingly, displaying text. It's got a text property. You can also set text color. There's also a subtitle or details um, property in there as well that will show some subordinate data if you want it to. But at any rate, the point of this is that we're going to set the text, but we want to tell it to set the text to the name of the product. And we'll do that with this syntax here using these curly braces, the binding keyword, and then this is the property that we want to bind to. So what this will do is this will create a cell for each item in the product list. There are 5 of them. Then for each of those, it's going to create a text cell and set the name and set the text property of that to the name of the product object. And probably can guess this already, but the item source is just going to be the product list. So let's see what that looks like. So in iOS, we just get the name of each one, and in Android, get the name of each one as well. But this is probably only for the, again, the most basic of scenarios going to work. What you're probably going to want to do is you're probably going to want to have a very custom layout, especially to make your app stand out. So what you're going to want to do is want to create some kind of custom cell. Now this isn't going to look that great because I'm not a designer, but it'll give you the idea of how to get started. So let's take a look at this XAML. So again, it's pretty much the same as the last one, except now the data template is not just a text cell, it's a view cell. And like I said, view cell is the base class for all ListView cells. And in here, I can put pretty much anything. So I'll create a stack layout, give it some padding so it's not all smushed up together. Going to set the orientation this to horizontal, so it'll go left to right instead of up and down. And then there's 2 labels, which will be, of course, side by side in the stack layout. The first one is just like before, simply is binding to the name. The second one we're going to bind to the unit cost, and since this is money, we will set the text color to green and also make it stand out with a large font size. And the code behind is nothing new. So let's look at how this functions in iOS. And so again, 5 labels, or 5 cells rather, a label for each name, and then a large green label for each cost. This could of course use a more complex layout to make these look better, but this is just showing the data binding. And then something similar with Android. So of course you can take this a lot further. This is very simple, just to show the concept. But that's how you get started with list views and data binding in Xamarin.Forms.